And here we go. I'm ready to go. Cats are better than dogs? Well, that's your personal opinion. Depending on what time of day, I might agree with you on that. I don't know how heretical it is for me to say that, seeing how my name is Mr. Dogboat. But yeah, here we are. In Vyatka. Now, in the last video, I gotta recall what we did. We finished up a lot of our economic stuff. Ended off some pirates. Now we're gonna get working on our more internal issues. Form an Imperial Council. Probably go ahead and do People Czar. And then we'll have Eagle fly once more. Right now we're doing the Great Game. We're going to get the little spy event chain coming up, I believe. Which will be very fun, I think. And what are we doing here? We got loot. We'll keep these guys... we may as well just keep them on the border of the Order of St. George for now. And then we'll go ahead and raid them whenever time comes. In an unnoticed farmhouse just outside Vyatka, the agents carried the bodies to shallow graves that had been early prepared. Neither of the agents felt any sympathy for the men they had killed. After all, as Smyslovsky had told them, to be in the Ukraina had to be tough. One had to be tough. Enemies of the state could be shown no mercy, lest disorder spread. They had been turned onto the men following one of the many raids on a suspected communist safe house, where a code letter, after being deciphered, led them to a warehouse. There, the men had been found, suspected of aiming to subvert the Tsar's regime on orders from Arkhangelsk. Like all committed revolutionaries, the men had resisted, but the agents knew their task, and that everyone eventually breaks. And one of them did. He revealed the existence of a revolutionary cell in Vyatka, with the ultimate goal of toppling the Tsar's government and establishing control for the Revolutionary Front before expiring. His companion, interrogated separately, collaborated with the story before exiting in a similar fashion. As the agents buried the bodies, they prepared their report. These men were just the beginning, and there would be much more work ahead. Stability must be ensured. There we go. We can invest in small arms and get some free weapons. That's not too bad, actually. Rallying new recruits. Ooh. Yeah, our manpower is pretty low, but we're training up this new division, which will be very nice. Valentin and Yevgeny, agents of the Ukraina, were confused as to why they'd been called to investigate a murder. The crime itself was not particularly rare in Russia, and was typically the responsibility of the ordinary police. Yevgeny was first to arrive, and it took him only a few minutes after proving to the suddenly skittish police officers who he was to understand why he had been called. Arriving later, Valentin understood similarly quickly. The existence of a revolutionary cell dedicated to the overthrow of the Tsar had recently been discovered. The dead man, an official from the Ministry of Finance, had his name flagged in connection to it, and having been assigned to the task force looking into the cell, they both knew immediately that there had to be a connection. Why this man had been killed, and by who, was still unclear. But to do so was an enormous risk on the part of the cell, and there had to be a reason. A reason that could be identified, understood, and followed. A reason that could, in time, lead them to resources and connections of the cell, and thereby destroy them. This could be more important than it seems. We'll have to wait and see, man. Do you want anti-tank? We don't really need anti-tank right now. Valentin and Yevgeny began their investigation by searching the house where the body had been found. Following the training they had been given by Smilovsky's instructions, they had first moved to determine the place and instrument of death. That at least proved simple. The man had been shot from behind in the kitchen by, judging from the wound, a small caliber pistol. The casing was bagged and would be examined to determine the type and origin of the gun. The next step was to look for evidence that might connect the man to the cell in order to trove the suspicions of him that had risen before his death. There was similarly found in a box of letters. Amongst the many sent to the man from family and friends, one stood out. Sent by Kachevzvenaya Dostovska, an import-export company that had been operating throughout West Russia, indicated that the man had been involved in moving unspecified cargo for them in and out of the industrial city of Izvensk. Another such letter indicated that he had recently facilitated the purchase of a small warehouse for the company here in Vyatka itself, and had specifically ensured that it was in a lesser-traveled part of a city. Both were promising leads, but the agent had to choose which to follow themselves. I'm thinking the warehouse. Let's go to the warehouse then. Following several days of surveillance, Valentin and Evgeny concluded that the warehouse was deserted. So convinced, they quickly broke inside the lock on one of the doors and entered. Inside, the cavernous space was mostly empty, and so the agents began searching the office for shipment records. It did not take long for them to discover a lead. Amongst the many mundane manifests, a series of shipments between the Vinaya Dostovska warehouse and locations in Izvensk were found, all facilitated by the same man, Koronovani Bryutko. Although the agents suspected the name to be false, after noticing it in several other documents, they retreated to Vyatka to pore through official records. Before long, they discovered it again in a register of addresses. Without delay, they set out to find the man with a strange name. Let's follow the trail. Fox, how you doing? Nice to see ya. Welcome. The residence of Koronovani Bryutko was anything but. The small house, though well kept on the outside, was nearly bare inside, containing only the most bare necessities and little else. To the trained eyes of Valentin and Evgeny, this meant one of two things. Either the man was an extreme ascetic, or more likely, this was a safe house. Leveraging their training and expertise, they began searching the house for clues, physical or otherwise. It did not take long before they found a well-concealed false floor panel. Underneath, a ladder descended into a crudely excavated cellar, and inside they found what they had come for. On a desk covered in maps and folders, one in particular stood out. Sampled, confidential, plain eagle. The paper inside the folder seemed to describe an upcoming sabotage operation against an industrial plant in Izvensk, using materials shipped from the warehouse they had earlier investigated. Knowing time was of the essence, the agents gathered up the folders and returned to the Vyatka headquarters. They needed to report to Smyslovsky immediately. Something concrete. Finally. There we go. We got the great game. Let's go ahead and form the Imperial Council. Even a man as dedicated and righteous as Tsar Vladimir cannot rule alone. Loyal retainers are needed, both as territorial administrators and as advisors on matters of state. As such, an Imperial Council will be established, allowing for the collection and application of the finest minds of the Principality to critical matters. Those so identified will include eminent figures in arts and sciences, experienced government functionaries, skilled military officers, and more. Their learned council will inform the Tsar about anything to which he is not aware, and should he be incapacitated for whatever reason, they can be trusted to maintain a regency until such time as the Tsar's duties can be resumed. Sounds reasonable to me. Let's read this first, and then we'll get back to the investigation. Although he hid it with the prevailed practiced grace of a monarch who had sat through 1,000 councils, Tsar Vladimir was exhausted. This meeting, yet another of the many between the representatives of the most prominent political factions in the Principality, namely Roman Gul, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, and Vasily Shulgin, had predictably developed into little more than a shouting match. You would have us speak of liberalization and democracy when we had barely secured our borders? Gul shot upright in protest. I would! Russia's future is at stake, and all you promote is the same thinking that empowered the communists in the first place. As Solzhenitsyn's face purpled with rage, Vladimir felt a migraine coming on, the stress having aggravated it. But the sudden intervention of Shulgin refocused him on the meeting. My liege, would you care to add your insight to this exchange? You have been rather quiet today. Vladimir cursed internally. Shulgin strongly supported him, of course, but the old man was never able to understand when he just wanted to be left alone. After a long moment, the Tsar spoke. You have all spoken well today. He began using words long practiced, and I will require time to consider them. Then I will take that time I'll take presently. Rising and departing, to respectful glances from all those present, Vladimir retreated down the halls, muffled shouting resumed behind him. The migraine was pounding at his temples. Perhaps he could ask his physician for some relief. When will the bickering end? Within the Principality, the industrial city of Svensk is well known for its many factories that persist even in the face of German bombings. Amongst them, none were more important than the Svensk mechanical plant. And as Valentin and Yevgeny arrived in the city, they knew that if a plot did extend here, the plant was likely to be at least one of its targets. The link between the deceased official from the Ministry of Finance and Svensk was one that had to be pursued, regardless of any other or obtained information. So the agents spent their day investigating every associate the man had in the city. Other ministry agents were gently interviewed, companies he had worked with were contacted, and offices that he had worked and searched. All to no success. However, there remained several specific factories that had been identified as letters, and which could still be explored. Perhaps additional leads could be found there. I say let's continue the search. For now. Damn commies, that's what I'm saying. What the fuck? Getting the better farming methods very soon. It's going around. Uh-oh. This factory, just like all the others that Valentin and Evgeny had investigated during their time in Svensk, was busy. And just like all the others, careful searches of its records had turned up nothing of interest. That changed very suddenly when an enormous eruption rocked the building, heaving the floor to one side and throwing the agents down to it. Knowing that the timing of the explosion was too perfect to be a coincidence, and further knowing how fortunate they truly were to be on site at the time of it, rather than arriving after the fact, the agents scrambled to recover. Running against the crowds of workers and towards the site of the explosion, Yevgeny spotted a figure standing nearby, a figure that appeared all too calm. Calling out to Valentin, Yevgeny drew his weapon and rushed towards the figure. He knew, in the way that only an investigator can, that the figure was involved, and he would not let it escape. He has to be part of a spy ring. Ooh, so we're get some damage here. Noticing Yevgeny's approach, the figure had taken off running through the factory complex, using the myriad pipes, machines, and other obstructions to break line of sight and attempt to escape. But if the figure thought such would work, he had clearly never been chased by Vyatka. Chasing the figure across a floor, through an emergency door, and down the stairwell beyond, Yevgeny was able to, for the first time, catch a good look at his quarry. The man was young, probably not out of his 20s, and clearly very physically fit. Besides, fit enough that he was pulling ahead of the agent. As Yevgeny emerged into the cold Svensk air, Valentin followed closely behind. He knew that he would likely have to make a decision as to the best way to likely catch the likely saboteur. Let's continue running behind him. Ooh, we can get a spy, I believe. Let's get a safecracker or an escape artist. Let's get a safecracker. Let's get Miss Ludima. Oh, what? I thought that was what you do to... Might be an RNG thing. Oh, well. Hoping that they made the right choice, Yevgeny quickly instructed Valentin on to what to do after he resumed his pursuit of Saboteur. Unfortunately, however, and although he pushed his body to the limit, the Saboteur continued to pull ahead. As they approached the exit of the factory grounds, the Saboteur grew even more distant. Yevgeny realized that he had a clear shot, and knowing it was preferable to eliminate an enemy agent if escape could not be prevented, slowed to better his aim, firing 3 times a moment later. One shot found its mark, striking the Saboteur in the shoulder, but before he could fire again, the figure, after several stumbling steps, disappeared into shadows. Yevgeny cursed as Valentin stopped beside him, equally angry. Both agents knew that they would mobilize the city's officers to try to find the Saboteur, and both knew it was unlikely to lead to an arrest. Already the Saboteur would be executing an escape plan, and within hours would be deep inside the Russian forest, if not in the territory of another foreign power altogether. Yevgeny and Valentin looked at each other, sharing a grimace. This was a major defeat. A dead end for the investigation. Fuck! Fucking commies almost got away with it. They got away with it. They did get away with it. God damn it. Man. Yevgeny and Valentin stood in the office of their superior, knowing what was about to happen. They'd both seen it happen to others many times before, but just like those others, they had always believed it would not happen to them. Their superiors heard the recounting of events, how they had been on the scene during the event's attack, how they had detected the saboteur, and then how, unforgivably, they allowed the saboteur to escape, robbing the Crown of the opportunity to interrogate them and discover other members of the cell. They were dismissed soon after. It took several days before the decision was actually made, but all knew what it would be. But services of Yevgeny and Valentin would no longer be needed. They had proven themselves unable to protect the Tsar and his nation, and the Okhrana did not tolerate failures in its ranks. Now, civilians, the agents would need to find a new purpose in life, a purpose that did not involve world secrecy and intrigue. They had shown that they did not have the skill for it. In this environment, success is a necessity. Now, I'm going to load a save real quick, see if we can't redo that. It happens to coincide with the autosave, so I'll try to do the same decisions and change it up at the end, see what happens there. Just so we can get that sweet satisfaction. And if it doesn't work, oh well. We have our answers. Well, we don't. This really must be insured. Be more important than it seems. To the warehouse. Follow the trail. Something concrete. Great game. Imperial Council. When will the bickering end? Continue the search. Has to be part of a spy ring. Split up and try to cut him off. It might be it might just be RNG. I'm thinking that. Well, it's a shame, but what are you gonna do? It says we can appeal for trucks, so we might just go ahead and do that. Although it doesn't say whether we get anything or not. The Rona conference ends. Looks like Italy is going to go ahead and go democratic. Novosibirsk is actually suffering a little bit, it seems. Because they got a pocket right there. We got new operatives. Yelena, tough. Let's go with this guy. Go ahead, scavenge for some loot. Form of the Imperial Council. Let's go ahead and go with the People's Tsar. The Tsar is a man blessed and chosen by God to lead Russia onwards. He is, just like his subjects, a Russian. He understands the needs of the common man, and knows well that, but for the chance of divinity, he would be amongst them in the fields, the factories, or the social club. No longer will he remain in his palace. He will travel far and wide. He will speak directly to the petitioners, and he will demonstrate his love for the country and the people firsthand. By doing so, he will inherently disprove the propaganda of our enemies, who claim him a distant, tyrannical, and uncaring despot. And he will bind our people together, leading them towards the future, and securing peace and prosperity for all Russians, great and small alike. Very nice. Ooh, actually, I take it back. Tomsk is not doing well. In fact, they are surrounded by both of their neighbors, and that encirclement is gone. The question is, who's going to win? The Black League would be interesting to see. Because I don't think I've seen the Black League win at all, or at least not for a long while. Cheetah versus Amur. Yeah, Amur is not doing very well. Neither is Magadon, really. We might see Cheetah pull in. Kemerovo's defeat Krasnoyarsk. Very interesting. Let's have a cultured court. We're cultured, boys. For generations, Russia's imperial court was known the world over for its splendor, its opulence, and the concentration of artists and intellectuals that surrounded it. If our goal is to revive Russia in body, we must begin by reviving Russia in spirit, and so reestablish its cultural and intellectual heart. We will generate and distribute generous grants to artists, poets, musicians, and intellectuals. We will invite them to our court and grant them citizenship in our lands, and commission vast quantities of artwork, composition, poetry, and more. We will usher in a new generation of Russian culture, and, in time, Russia will once again be known as a beacon of culture and the arts, with the Tsar as its greatest patron. Alright, we got some more loot. We can raid St. George again. Let's work on the schools. The Levantine Kingdom, Novosibirsk is 1. Imperial Council. Where's Levantine Kingdom? There it is. Yeah. Okay. We're already pretty popular, it seems. I'll wait until we can go ahead and up our economic strength. And then we'll go ahead from there. Let's raid St. George. Cultured Court. Let's go ahead and do our Pride Untarnished. Although modest in size, the Tsar's Principality is one of the few bastions of civilization, peace, and stability in Russia. Unlike the warlords and bandits who surround us, our territory is secure, criminals are dealt with, and we have a government composed of learned men who have put the good of the state above their own state interest. We have carried the torch of the Russian Empire through its darkest of days, and emerged in the light, strong and ready to march forward once again. We will prepare to campaign for the campaigns to come, for the efforts to spread the culture and splendor we have built here. Russian splendor and culture to all Russians. We, the Tsar, are the stewards of this great nation, and we will return it to greatness. There we go. Should be paid. See, was that hard? Was that hard, guys? That's what I thought. No. It was not that hard at all. Krasnoyarsk. Not Krasnoyarsk. Novosibirsk versus Oirotia. Komi, yeah? That's cute. Oh, they're having their coups, boys. So, Suslov. Okay, shit. Fucking, just read to do that. And we will, not back down so easily. They're attacking right into the capital. Hitler's dead, enemies defeated. Nice try. But no. Are they... Okay, so Komi is secured... has been secured, it seems. For the commies. Komi or Komi. Either or. Our pride is untarnished. Let's go ahead and get a new national focus. The eagle shall fly once more. The glory of the empire has been restored, and one can see in every aspect of our principality. The Tsar protects his people and keeps their interests in mind, and they in turn trust him and work without complaint. It is that bond of mutual faith that gives us strength and ensures the stability of our lands. But these lands are not enough. Russia's a vast country, and much of it lies shattered and broken under the heel of extremists, fanatics, and criminals alike. The Tsar can no longer bear to see his people suffering so. Until the Imperial Eagle flies from the German border to the Far East, his and our mission will not be complete. Our disciplined armies, supported by devoted populace, stand ready to carry the Tsar's standard forward, and all they need is the order to march. Tsunami Bolg. That's one coup. I think we're stuck on the one coup, sadly. Because they've figured out... They did the coup tree, I'm afraid. So from there, no more coups. Oh. German Civil War. Yep. So thus necessary that the individual should finally come to realize that his own ego is of no importance in comparison with that of a nation. Adolf Hitler. Well, the good news is why is our field marshal in charge of the army there? What? Okay, let's get... Yeah, I need to click on this. Okay. Let's get Nikolai back in here. Chaos and Ostland. For a long time, life in a very large portion of Russia has been defined by the German terror bombing campaigns. An entire generation of Russians has grown up in blasted ruins, always watching the skies and ready to run to cover the moment the dark figures of the bombers themselves are spotted. An entire generation of government, whatever the ideology, has struggled with establishing an infrastructure or an industrial base of any kind, and what little is built is often promptly destroyed. But not anymore. Millions of Russians have not had to make desperate runs to safety for days. Repairs to civilian and military infrastructure have progressed, and have not been destroyed in turn. New constructions still stand, and a realization has dawned. The bombers have stopped. To those with access to information from outside the Reich, it is believed that the civil chaos now engulfing the hated Reich, and its colonial extension, the Reichskommissariat, has rendered it impossible for the aerial efforts to continue. To those without it, it is believed by many to be a gift from God. Even as ordinary Russians celebrate with something approaching delirium, however, others speak of dark clouds on the horizon. The many Russian statelets, no longer suffering paralysis at the bombs of the Germans, are now free to look outwards. Only time will tell how they choose to proceed. So with that in mind, we're going to put our troops on the border with the Aryan Brotherhood. Speidel assumes control of Germania. I'll introduce some new taxes and speak on the radio. Popular support is now moderate, but our economic strength is hopefully going to go up along with it. Hopefully, I don't know. Let's get some basic artillery going. The English Civil War has begun. Oh! Moscovian is imploding in on itself. Oh, man. Oh. Now that is nice to see. I like that. SS Plaskow, Smolensk, Muscovy, Kaminsky. There goes Ostland. South Africa, no one starts a war, or rather no one senses ought to, without first being clear in his mind what he intends to achieve by that war and how he intends to conduct it. Harold G. Moore. Our nation in flames. We'll see what they ended up doing there. You can scavenge for loot. Loot, loot. Kemerova versus Siberian Black Army. Okay. Climb from the pit. It's time we put our house in order. Ooh. Scorpion exploding. Maybe we'll see fun at Eat Potato Sack, man. That's what I'm hoping. Alright, we've climbed from the pit. Western Russia, suffering for decades under the German bombings, is generally a lawless and under-industrialized place. With that in mind, the reforms and developments within the Vyatka have turned the principality into something of an oddity, safe and with a reasonably prosperous economy. But we cannot stop. Beyond our border, in the rightful lanes of the Tsar, millions of Russians lie crushed under the boot of oppression and poverty, and they must be rescued. Our enemies move to do so for themselves, and so we must strike first. The time for talking is over. The Imperial Council will be called, and plans will be made to march forward. Russia will be secured for the people, for the Tsar, and for the House of Romanov. What do we got? What's the infighting? The infighting is pretty bad. But if we get working on this, eventually we just flat out move up in army level. So, get political interference out of the way. We move up, we just move up outright to a professional army. That is huge. For the Romanovs, exactly. Man, that is pretty huge. So let's get working on the Imperial Russian Army. Russia has a long and storied military tradition of struggle, success, and visionary leadership. Unfortunately, however, as the military of a late empire, as well as our own, cannot be said to live up to this legacy. Our soldiers are poorly trained, our equipment outdated, our doctrine inflexible, and our support equipment nearly non-existent. If we are to extend our influence across the statelets surrounding us, let alone over all of Russia, this must be addressed. We will determine a consistent doctrine, improve our training regimens, and fortify critical sectors. In doing so, we will possess a solid base on which to launch external campaigns. There we go, 10 days for that. Moscow, Bogey Smart, is it? There he is! Funny Potato Man. Beautiful. Beautiful. Where the fuck are the Yankees? There he is. There's the ANC. There's Gorbachev, Mr. Pizza Hut himself. Go ahead, liquidate some state assets. Our economy is high. Let's get defense plan Kutuzov going. Mikhail Kutuzov was one of Russia's greatest generals. His defensive actions during Napoleon's invasion are legendary, leading to near annihilation of an army initially considered far superior to his own. To ensure that our territory is secure from attack while our army is on campaign, we must prepare proper defenses. Defense plan Kutuzov will therefore be assumed, and a series of fortifications, simple as they may be, will be constructed along our borders. If we are to be attacked in a moment of weakness, they will provide us with sufficient time to respond accordingly. We will begin construction. Okay, the Kingdom of Caucasia. Josiah says, he's prepared for our campaign. Now that we reached 1K subs on the YouTube, let's go! Woo! Let's see. Luckily we don't have Tabby over there. Thank God for that. That would just be awkward. Do you want a New Age of War? Land doctrines. The Imperial Commandos sound pretty nice. For now, let's get the Vyatka General Staff Academy. It's no secret that a near-complete failure of both leadership itself and its cultivation crippled the Russian army in the Great War. Unfortunately, too many of our officers developed their skills under that system, or progressed through no system at all, and thus threatened the efficacy of our own army. We must take action to correct this. By working with both experienced senior and innovative junior officers, we will develop a training curriculum for our officer corps and make its completion mandatory across all officer ranks. In time, graduates of the Vyatka General Staff Academy will be known as some of the most competent officers in all of Russia. There we go. We could raid St. George again. This just seems like bullying at this point, honestly. Let's do industrial equipment. It was thankless work to labor in the rain with rust-eaten saws and chipped axes, but it was necessary work, too. For Alexei and Kirill, it was the only work that they had known since their conscription. Tearing down derelict buildings, salvaging material, digging trenches, and shoring up whatever defenses they could, anything to fortify Vyatka's borders against these threats that lurked without. I don't know, wasn't it a bit bigger before? The young conscript wasn't wrong. The old bunker had seen better days. The underground foundations of the shelter were truly sprawling, a maze of hold-fast, fit to house more than 100 men. It had taken them the better part of a day to clear the rubble from where the roof had caved in. Now the bunker would be home to whatever men could be spared for sentry duty, and the roof was a series of logs coated in mud to help keep the rain out. It was, but it'll have to do. We're not made of concrete. Supplies were always spread thin in the Russian wasteland. One learned to make do with what they had if they wanted to survive. In fort building, that meant using old Soviet installations. If there wasn't concrete available, you looked for solid stones. If the stones weren't stable, wood made up the rest. And when there was nothing left but dirt, trenches were dug and lined with bags full of the very same soil. Their current project was a sight better than when they first arrived. What had started as a pile of shattered concrete and rusted metal lugs was now a half-respectable redoubt on Vyatka's northern border. It wouldn't stop a determined assault, but for the purposes of making would-be raiders think twice it was adequate. Inadequate would have to do. Hurry up, we've got more digging to do. What's Old Bear Sneaky up to? What are the Aryans up to? They're solidifying control. Komi is the road to Arkhangelsk. We'll see what happens with the front there. The front isn't even ready yet. Samara is going with Reformist guy. Okay, so they got plenty of time still. They gotta get down to this anyway. These guys are about to raid Bashkira. In my experience, they've botched it plenty of times, so we'll wait and see what happens there. Let's do a New Age of War to get these free units. The performance of Russian armies in the Great War, the Second World War, and the West Russian War have made it abundantly clear that our previous approaches to warfare are outdated. We must adapt. We will swallow our pride, overrule resistance from senior officials, and study the tactics, strategy, and approaches of Americans, the British, the Japanese, and, yes, the Germans. Time and warfare have changed, and we will change alongside it. With modern approaches to eternal problems, we will at least be on the equivalent footing with our enemies, allowing our other advantages to carry us to victory. There we go. How's our time doing? Yeah, there's another 6 minutes in this part. Not too bad. Military exercises. Ooh, military exercises. That's not too bad. Planning speed. We might want to fortify the southern border first, I'm thinking. The completion of domestic reforms and the imperial reclamation of Western Russia soon begin. Though some statelets might agree to peaceful integration, many others will have to be conquered. In order to facilitate success, it may be prudent to take additional measures, such as the construction of fortifications, decisions on doctrinal priorities, and the holding of military exercises. So we just need some more political power, and then we can go ahead and do some of this stuff. Algerian War. A New Age of War. Now let's get the Imperial Commandos. Modern war has repeatedly proven that the value of specialized and highly trained formations of soldiers assigned to specific tasks. Our officers have made it clear that they believe creating such formations of our own would be of extreme assistance in the upcoming campaigns, and we have no reason to doubt them. As such, we will study the structure and doctrines of foreign special forces units, modify them as needed for our own environment, and apply them to formations of motivated and experienced volunteers. Our enemies will not be expecting to encounter the Imperial Mountaineers, Marines, or Airborne, and that surprise will allow us to claim victory all the faster. There we go. Okay, Novosibirsk versus the PRC. Depending on if anyone gets the Siberian Black Army, they might get a 2-for-1. If Novosibirsk takes out the PRC and they took out the Black Army before. Though it was the Imperial Eagle emblazoned upon their uniforms, it was silence that reigned over the men huddling against a wall of interlocking logs. Each stood ready, with a rifle in hand, anxiously waiting for a signal that they had already heard 100 times that day. And that whistle blew. The soldiers moved as one. Sprint to the far wall, keep your guns up, don't stop until you've hit solid cover. Breathe. Watch your flanks, stack up on the door. The man at the front blows out the hinges. Point man kicks in what's left and leads away. The stack moves one at a time. Two stay by the doorway to watch for any surprises. Each movement is controlled, precise, practiced. Eyes on every angle, guns at every corner. All except for one. Cold metal barrel pressed against the neck of the point man. Bang. You're dead. You're all dead. You're fucked. You know why? The men looked to their boots or to the sky, but none dared look at Lieutenant Matveyev in the eye. You're fucked because you're acting like common soldiers instead of Imperial Commandos. You clear the house the same way 99 times. The whistle blows, you run, you stack up, you breach. You let it become routine. So on the 100th time, when your dear lieutenant is waiting in the cupboard instead of down the hall, what happens? We get fucked? Maybe they'd be special forces material yet. You get fucked. Good! Get back to the start. We're running it again. They've got some long days ahead of them, so we lose some recruitable population factor, but we get special forces attack and special forces defense. And we get some mountaineers. That's actually pretty damn nice. Okay, let's get Russia's finest going. Whew, look at that. When first inspected, the Tsar's military was truly in a sorry state. Outdated training, confusing doctrines, poor leadership, and lack of proper facilities severely hampered its effectiveness in armed engagements. But that has all changed. Our reforms have effected a near total reversal in both perception and actual ability. Our soldiers now march in disciplined ranks, are watched over by skilled, motivated, and innovative officers, possess pride in both their nation and the Tsar. Truly, they are the finest men in all Russia. It is a long way. There will be many challenges on the path, but the Imperial Army is now as prepared as it could ever be to face them. So we are just going ahead and just outright getting better troops. That is huge. We're losing all of our army debuffs, at least when it comes to this. Now we still have one of these about Tsar Assault. Military infighting is a pain. Oh, Kemerovo took out the Black Army. Okay. I'm hoping Kemerovo doesn't win again. That's just going to be boring. Let's call the Council. The Imperial Council has been an extremely successful construction for the Tsar, allowing for the delegation of minor issues and reception of advice on larger ones. But now it will truly be put to the test. With reunification on the horizon, the Tsar will need all the help he can get. This will be a collective effort by the Council as a whole. Questions related both to internal and external issues must be answered, the military must be stabilized. The Tsar has decreed such, and the Council must work to successfully implement that decree. There we are. Kemerovo, they're striking at the remnant. Looks like democracy is returning to Finland. Call the Council. Let's go down these two. Let's put an end to these assassinations. It's an unfortunate reality that the officers of our army are frequently at each other's throats, often quite literally. More than one assassination of a senior officer has occurred at the hands of a colleague or subordinate, and cliques within the military have acted in some cases to protect those murderers. This is completely unacceptable. The Council will mandate the Krana to establish a supervisory office within the military command structure to identify both cliques and criminals within it and to bring them to justice. The Army must be united, indivisible, and loyal only to God and the Tsar.